Hey everybody, Brian Von Vier here, back at it again, discussing a topic we all love, or we all hate. As a DM, how do you deal with Murderhobo players who kill everything in your D&D campaign? The only time I've had to deal with a Murderhobo was when I really didn't have too much of a spine. Murderhobo in question was playing a lawful good fighter, probably lawful stupid, and anyone who dared to question him would be threatened with being kicked out of his place. Oh boy. While venting to another friend of mine, he suggested a diabolical plan. That I invite him to play, and he makes a lawful evil rogue with the Assassin Prestige class, this was 3.5, who was hired to take the Murderhobo down. We got the okay for my friend to join because, and I quote, the Murderhobo, "We need a trap guy." So my friend joins the party, and when the Murderhobo begins his usual routine, my friend launches his net with fish hooks woven into the net laced with poisons that did damage to wisdom over him. Then the net's enchantment of hold person kicks in, and the Murderhobo failed to save due to his now very low wisdom score. My friend goes on a speech about actions and consequences and how it sometimes takes a monster to kill a monster. He then delivers the coup de grace, which sends the Murderhobo into an out-of-game temper tantrum. He demands that my friend leave, and I begin packing up to leave, telling the Murderhobo I was finally done with his shit. Can we just get a collective high five? That was an epic way to handle that. I had a player as a solo character in a cyberpunk-type vehicle RPG. After engaging a police vehicle on the road, he stopped to salvage the laser weapons from the police car's turret, leaving the officer to bleed out in the driver's seat. This player continued to do so even when I described the flashing lights of other police cars approaching. Still, he continued to unbolt the weapons from the car. Finally, the police backup has arrived. When the police NPCs saw what the character was doing while a brother officer lay dying, the police shot the player character where he stood using anti-vehicle weapons, leaving a mess. Then they all agreed that the player character had pointed a gun at them first. I keep a karma counter through the DM, and as more evil actions occur, I have it reflected in the world. More pestilence and diseases as those who treat them go to seek safety in other areas. There is more crime, and I have monsters who grow stronger the lower the good karma there is, feeding on the sorrow and misery of the people. So places in the world would be easier for good players to become near impossible the worse they make things. In my homebrew campaign, I have a night order of doppelgangers that pose as standard citizens, but swiftly act upon shows of unnecessary violence at the cost of the killer's life and the party's funds. This not only discourages the act of murder-hoboing, but gets the party distancing themselves from those that do. Aside from that, the party solving quests and contracts with violence when it isn't called for usually results in reduced to no pay, rejection from hire, and bounties for them if desperate enough. And if it gets bad enough, the forces of the big bad evil guy may try hiring them, if not becoming the good guys by trying to kill them. There you go again, incentivizing trying to make people think with their heads, not their swords. You want to make sure that, hey, just because we want you to drive the bandits off doesn't mean we want you to slaughter them and their families. We want you to deal with it without making a gigantic mess. Though, a mess happens, you still get paid, but you get more if you do something out of the box. Good idea. In my homebrew world, I have a group of high-level warriors that are known as Legionnaires. They are each assigned a specific region of the world. Similar to the Spectres in Mass Effect and the Judges from Judge Dredd, these fighters have free reign to do what they need to do to deal with threats which the common city guards and regional military forces can't deal with themselves for whatever reason. In terms of legality, they are more like specters than judges in that they are not bound by law and have the authority to commandeer the city guard or regional military forces if necessary to fulfill their mission of ensuring national security. But when it comes to sentencing, they are both judge and jury and executioner if the situation calls for it. Whenever I start a campaign in this world, I make sure that the first time the party enters a city, or if they are already starting in a city, the first time they venture out into the market, the city plaza, or otherwise an open area, they encounter a legionnaire doing their job. Usually it will be through a relatively minor infraction. In one instance, a particularly slippery thief managed to snatch something from the market for the 5th time and was making his escape, only to find himself flat on his back waking up from unconsciousness. The Legionnaire from that region happened to be in the market at that time. They stepped out of the shadows and clotheslined him so hard that the back of his head hit the ground and knocked him unconscious. It also happens when, during the description of the event, the rest of the townfolk who witness it back away in terror, calling out the name of that particular Legionnaire as if they had just witnessed a myth become real right in front of them. When the party sees something like that happen, it usually takes the whole Murderhobo thing off the table pretty damn quick. Hopefully, though, these people, the Legionnaires, are able to join in the final battle for the fate of the world, as it were, either against or for the big bad evil guy, depending on their actual alignment and style, because otherwise, I mean, seriously, why would you just have all these super badass people and just reduce them to Murderhobo negation? In my Session 0 discussion, I lay out the character types that fit into edgelord and Murderhobos and how they're not tolerated in my games. I have not encountered a player that hasn't turned one of these archetypes into a toxic total party wipe or an extremely uncomfortable situation for any female player that sits at the table. Sorry, this isn't a failure as a DM on my part. After 20 years of DMing, I just no longer have the patience to deal with the whining, the rules lawyering, the egos, and the disturbing Machiavellian behaviors of some individuals. With that being said, anyone who chooses to subvert this ban is met with a rather unfortunate and quite game-ending curse that I call the Emperor's New Clothes, named after the children's story to the effect. This curse cannot be removed due to its divine origin. After a Murderhobo or edgelord starts with their shenanigans, they're visited in their dreams by a veiled figure. When they wake up in the next morning, all of their belongings turn to ash. If they try to pick up a piece of equipment, it turns to dust right in their hand. However, if they try to take someone else's stuff, it'll also disintegrate in their hands, only to have it reappear in perfect condition back with the original owner. For anyone who has ever used a consequence-based method to deal with these types of players, I can assure you that the last thing one of these Murderhobo or edgelords wants is to be forced into streaking through whatever town they're in with no possible way of getting equipment or defending themselves against the impending mob. I've only used this as a punishment twice, once on a friend who didn't think I would do it, which turned out to be a funny story, and the second time was a person who truly deserved it after they began making multiple female players uncomfortable. Well, it's what my character would do. Is not a free pass to be a deplorable person. That person left the Discord and no one even remembers their name. I have a fair but serious consequence that I have planned for Murderhobos in my campaign world. Some really strong forces of good creatures exist, such as gold dragons or angels. They might take their arms and protect the world from the player's malice. Players will find themselves hunted down by the law without allies like criminals, and since their heinous acts, they shall be killed like law enforcement would do to stop a murder spree. If my evil players win despite everything I throw at them, then my players end the campaign victorious in their dark deeds and create a new villain for my campaign to challenge the next set of heroes to murder them, later in the sense of justice they deserve. Like everyone else, it all comes down to in-game consequences. That said, I made an NPC that's basically a litmus test for murder-hoboing behavior and an immediate punishment should the players engage. I would like to introduce to all of you, dun 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 dun, Terry, the level 3 Red Dragonborn Wizard. A humble, jolly shopkeeper with an inventory of rare magical items. Adorned in colorful but largely unremarkable robes, he travels from town to town selling his wares at reasonable prices to those who would do business respectfully. He is intended to be a quest giver and a way to give the party a small boost earlier in the campaign. That said, should the group try to kill him and take his stuff, well, Terry the Dragonborn will reveal himself to be Terry the Teleporting Tarrasque. Oh, Jesus! And it's basically TPK time. To be clear, this dude is selling his wares in a marketplace out in the open. There are town guards patrolling and all that, yeah. The scenario is set up in such a way that no reasonable person would think robbing is a good idea. Well, someone actually asked this commenter a question, and we're going to explore that a little bit. Okay, but why go to such extreme lengths? At that point, you're basically making it crystal clear that you, as the GM, are punishing that player or players for their behavior. It has nothing to do with actions have consequences, because Tarrasques don't polymorph themselves into mortals and live life as humble merchants. Unless that's part of your homebrew lore or something, I don't know. Why not have the city guards arrest them? Or have the Merchants Guild send bounty hunters after them? Those are realistic and reasonable consequences. You point out that a reasonable person would think robbing is a bad idea because there are town guards patrolling. But your consequence for evil behavior is, well, very far from reasonable. That said, I'm not telling you how to DM, no, I'm just questioning the apparent disconnect between a reasonable person would know this is a bad idea, and no reasonable person would be able to predict this as a consequence. Now, let's explore the response by the original poster. I can see where you would get a clear disconnect here. To clarify, Terry is unique in that I don't run any other NPC that does exactly what he does. He is broken and is intended to only appear once. I have other similar NPCs that exist, but none of them are there to punish the players unless they do something stupid. An example would be the level 14 fighter waiting tables at the put to pay off a debt. He isn't designed as an encounter. Just a dude who will jump in to help the PCs if something goes down in the bar, assuming it wasn't their fault. To elaborate on something though, I, admittedly, should have put in my original post, if the party engages Terry in the market, he will tank the attack, yell out for help, and teleport away, leaving them to deal with the reasonable consequences. If he is isolated, say, in a scenario where the party follows him into an alley or out of town to try and gank him, then that's when the TPK encounter will happen. Additionally, he will only attack the people who attack him first. If there is only one player who is out to kill him and the rest of the party stays out of it, then only that player will die. To add a bit more context as well, I play with a tight-knit friend group and I am normally not DMing. I'm not great at it yet, but I'm trying to get better. With all that said, I have a long history of making similarly unassuming characters, mostly as PCs, and the players know that as we've been friends for anywhere between 5 to 15 years. They are in on the joke. I do appreciate the input though. Hearing an outside perspective helps me understand how people will perceive my somewhat insane ideas, and that helps a lot. So yeah, thanks. Hey, if you ever listen in, this is my short little take on it. Don't have a polymorphed character that can just TPK a party within seconds. You learn nothing and you gain nothing from it. Instead, here's an idea. If he's a merchant and he's a mage at the same time, maybe, just maybe, he's in a guild, the Merchants Guild or maybe a Wizards Guild or both. They might have a small trinket that is placed in their body or on them, maybe a rune, a ring, or an amulet, where they can check in on each other from time to time at great distances. Say that the mage dies, Terry. When he dies, there's an automatic fluctuation with these runes or this object that tells everybody else in the same guild, oh crap, someone killed Terry, and it gives a magical imprint on the people that kill him. So it's sort of like setting out the bounty hunters as it were, but it gives a nice flavorful reason as to why they still got caught, even though they dragged this poor unassuming person into the middle of a basement and gutted him. Same goes for stealing. It's like a two-way radio. Hey, I got robbed. Can you go find these guys and kick their ass for me? I don't know, just an idea. Hey everybody, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and of course, as always, I just want to say, communication is key. Talk to your players beforehand, talk to them during the event, and try to work things out as reasonable as possible. Don't confuse consequences with being petty. Always try to be the better man or woman or anyone else that you identify as. We love you. Be safe, be happy. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.